Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it is your boy. I'm here to talk about this gentleman right on this screen that you see here. First of all, I just want to say that I in no way am saying that I hate pastors. I do have thoughts about megachurch pastors who flaunt their wealth, flex their wealth. Um, and I'm trying to choose my words, in the most careful way I can. I just find it to be weird, the flexing of your wealth. Like it's one thing to be a pastor, and the job of a pastor is to counsel people who are in need of a spiritual cleanse or changing changing the way society is and giving people hope. It doesn't have to be a financial type of thing. It could be helping a community. It could be saving a marriage. It could be helping the less fortunate, helping some poor people who who whose living conditions aren't aren't good. Um that is the intent of a pastor. And it is the intent of the pastor as well to preach the good word and you know preach about the good and preach about the bad, and also inform people that life is all about life is all about sacrifice, and life is all about roller coasters and hiccups in the road. That is the entire structure of being a pastor. And I respect any pastor who does any of that or all of that. Okay, so this is what I'm going to say about televangelists. I don't have a problem with televangelists. What I do have a problem with, what I said previously, is the flexing of wealth. Whether you're whether the money you got came from selling this or selling that, it doesn't matter. None of that makes it right. So I'm gonna get into the story now. So the story is televangelist Joel Osteen trends on Twitter after buying a $325,000 Ferrari. Hold on, I'm not even done. That's not even the full story. Let me find the full story for you real quick. That's not even the full story. That's half of the story. Okay. Now, okay, so here's the full story. This past Sunday, Twitter users took to the platform with a barrage of tweets after news reported by the Small Business Administration, SBA, as y'all know, of the $4.4 million PPP loan awarded to Pastor Joel Osteen's Lakewood Church in Houston broke. Their fury was further fueled when photos of famed pastor's newly purchased $25,000 Ferrari 458 Italia surfaced. I don't know if I said that right. I'm going to continue reading. The question of ethicality of mega churches and their esteemed pastors has been persistently brought to the forefront of discussion since the creation of the very first one. Many question What's too much for God, and whether these megachurch pastors have veered too far off course from traditional church practices. Some believe these churches' sole focus is monetary growth and not preaching the word of God and stewardship. The pastor is far from struggling. He and his wife currently live in their $10.5 million house in River Oaks. Now, just to set it off for you guys, River Oaks is a very, 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 very rich area in Houston. One of the richest areas in Houston. Matter of fact, the church is in the richest area in Houston. So, I mean, you can just imagine how that is. They also own a second $2.9 million mansion in Tanglewood, Houston. Once again, that's a rich area in Houston. And his newest Ferrari is not his first or only luxury car tucked away in his garage. Okay. So, like I said, I don't have a problem with megachurch pastors. I do have a problem with the flaunting or the flexing of the wealth. It's kind of like I said, it's weird to me. It's just I don't know. It's weird. And to say that Joel Osteen is not the most hated human being in Houston, it would be it would be an understatement. He is the most hated human being in Houston. I think there's like about maybe four other people that are hated in Houston, but if you had to put up a list of people and you had to pick the first person, like the very first person that is hated in Houston, it would definitely be Joel Osteen. And not even just the fact that he's hated. He's hated by black people mostly. That's just my opinion. It might be wrong, it might be right, I don't know, but I feel like it's mostly it's mostly black people who don't like Joel Osteen. But he's hated about like by every he's hated by a lot of people in Houston. And he's also, of course, there's supporters as well, but I feel like it's mostly hate. It's mostly hate. He's mostly hated. So going on here, it says Twitter users had varying opinions on the matter. However, many felt the pastor's luxury lifestyle and new purchase were unwarranted. Okay. The other reason I forgot to mention, the other reason why Joel Osteen is so hated is because when there was a hurricane, Joel Osteen closed his doors. He didn't let people who needed shelter come into his church. So that's just another reason why he's hated in Houston. Just he's hated because he's a pastor who's I would probably say he's a wealthy flexing pastor. That's why he's hated, number one. Number two, why he's hated is because he didn't open his doors when there was a hurricane. He didn't open the church doors when there was a hurricane. So, um, going through these Twitter comments, it says Joel Osteen got 4.4 million in forgivable PPP loans, pays nothing in taxes, drives a $325,000 Ferrari, closed the doors of his church to those in need after a hurricane. You're a false prophet who reaps false profits. Ugh, it's crazy. What would Jesus think of Joel Osteen's $325,000 Ferrari? Jesus turned water into wine for his disciples. Joel turned donations from his disciples into an Italian sports car. The evolution of Christianity. Y'all forgot that Jesus was a wealthy man. He fed, housed, and clothed 12 disciples for years. A beautiful lady wiped his feet with her hair. His earthly father was a carpenter. Very rich profession then and now. Jesus loves his followers to be rich. Okay. But does that make it right though? That this is kind of I don't think that makes it right. Remember that one time Joel Osteen helped the poor instead of himself? Yeah, me neither. I'll never understand how people buy whatever Joel Osteen is selling. The prosperity gospel is dangerous in telling your constituents that the more they give to the church, the more they will be blessed, is literally not what Jesus stood for. Jesus helped others, not himself. Okay, so of course there's also the supporters of Joel Osteen. This is about to be interesting. They commented as well. Why do people want church leaders to be poor? He takes no salary from Lakewood and is a multi-millionaire by his books and his business ventures. I do not understand the hate he gets. Now, see, this one. I'm gonna say this about that comment. I I'm gonna go ahead and say I don't really have a problem with pastors who had a previous profession or held a previous or have a like profession next to being a pastor. I have no problem with that. But I do have a problem with people like Joel Osteen who they've never done anything besides be a pastor and they're rich for it. You're rich for being a pastor. Like off of people's people wanting some hope. Like they're sowing their money into your church and you are just basically just taking advantage of it is what it looks like, you know? But I have no problem with like I said, I have no problem with a pastor who had a job, who had like an actual profession before they became before the I'm sorry, before being called to be a pastor. I have no problem with that. But I do have a problem with people who all they've ever been was a pastor and now they've become like a rich pastor and it's just like you're flexing. Like you have like this gigantic house and these sports cars, these German and foreign engineered cars. Like, is anybody surprised that Joel Osteen got 4 million in PPP loans? That's the real question. Like, are you surprised that the guy got forgivable PPP loans? I'm not. Okay, this next one. Y'all really upset Joel Osteen lives lavishly. Y'all think he interviewed with Oprah for free or something? Or is it a Twitter thing to just be upset about something you can't typically understand? What is there to understand? He's a rich pastor. He's a rich pastor that mostly everybody in Houston don't like. What am I supposed to understand? See, she probably don't live in Houston, so she don't have no idea what's going on. She don't have no idea what's going on. See, I I've never heard nobody in Dallas say they don't like TD Jakes because he didn't open the doors of his church to some people in need. I never heard nothing like that. Maybe there are people in Dallas who don't like TD Jakes, but the reason why they probably don't like him is because he's probably a millionaire. That's probably why they don't like him. But I've never heard nobody say, "Oh, I don't like TD Jakes because he didn't open up the doors of his church for some people who needed to find shelter." That's only that's we have that bad rap because of this guy who's a pastor in our city. We have to take that. I'm sure most everybody in Houston is like, nah, we don't claim him. Of course, of course, you know it's wrong. Like I said, it's wrong. It's wrong. Like, and then you're talking about typically understand. Do you have the same amount of money as Joel Osteen? No. Joel Osteen is a best-selling author. Why can't he own a Ferrari? Listen, I'm not saying he can't. Nobody is saying he can't own. Nobody is saying a pastor can't own a nice car or a nice house. It's just like, why does it? Why do you need to flaunt that? Why do you need to flex that? It's nothing good coming from. It's nothing good coming from somebody taking a picture of you, taking a picture of your nice mansion, and you got members of your church struggling to find a job. You got members of your church who are getting divorced, and their marriages are declining, and their children are being separated from their separated and having to go stay with one parent versus the other. It's like it doesn't look good on you when you got all this lavish stuff, and you live in a nice house, nice car. You can go anywhere you want to go. He probably got houses in other states. Like it's not a good look on him. It does that is a bad representation of him. You know. And then this last one, Joel Osteen is a best-selling author. He has made his money through selling his books and his CDs. His salary is meager. Do you think other authors have no right to spend their money? Ma'am, ma'am. Oh my gosh. If another person brings up the fact that he's an author, all the thing that let me see if I can explain this for anybody out there who keeps saying he's an author. The difference between him and, hey, let me the difference between him and Robert Greene is that Robert Greene is not a pastor. Robert Greene is an author only. He's only an author. Joel Osteen is an author, and Joel Osteen is a pastor and an author, and a whole bunch of other stuff as well. But the main thing is he's a pastor. So everybody who keeps bringing up the fact that he's an author, ma'am, sir, he is a pastor. That's what you keep separating from it. He's a pastor. He's a motivational speaker. He could be a recording artist and all this other stuff. But you got to remember the main point and valid point here is that he's a pastor. He's a pastor first before anything. So the difference between him and another author is they're authors first. Do you get what I mean? He's a pastor first. Author is probably third or fourth or fifth or sixth or seventh down the line before it's not the main thing. I don't see and mostly I don't see authors out here flexing. You don't see I don't see any of my favorite authors flexing at all. He is. Joel Osteen is. You get what I'm saying? So that's the difference between an author and somebody who is an author but is a pastor first. That's what's making this a topic. That's what's making this a so to speak. That's what makes this shocking. It's because he's a pastor. Sure, he's an author too, but it's not a good look. It don't look right. It looks weird. Let me finish with what she even said. Joel Osteen is actually a motivational speaker. He never went to a seminary. Like I said, he of course he has many titles under his belt. He's an author. He's an author, motivational speaker, and a whole bunch of other things, marriage counselor, and all that. But I need all of you who love Joel Osteen, and I'm not telling you not to love Joel Osteen. I'm not saying to hate Joel Osteen, but think about it like this: a pastor got a $4 million PPP loan, not an author. A pastor got a Ferrari, went and bought a Ferrari, $325,000, not an author. A pastor has a church here in Houston, in the Galleria. His church is in the most expensive, one of the most expensive parts of Houston. A pastor. He's a pastor first. And that's what I need you just to remember out of all of this. Hey, listen. This is the end of the video. If you love Joel Osteen, congratulations. But this just makes him out to be just as evil as he's always been perceived to be. That's what the underlining thing is. And I just want to also say that I'm not making this a black or white thing, because if, like, I already gave you an example of a black pastor who owns a mega church, Creflo Dollar with the $22 million jet. Joyce Myers, Kenneth Copeland. Like, it's TD Jakes is a millionaire. He got cars and houses and stuff, but I think the difference between a TD Jakes versus a Joel Osteen is that TD Jakes isn't really out here showing his wealth the way Joel Osteen is out here showing his Ferrari and his house and stuff. It's just the main difference here. So that's what I think about it. If you love it, you love it. If you hate it, you hate it. Hey, if you like the guy, hey, congratulations to you. If you the real one, at the end of the day, the real ones know. Y'all take it easy, man.